For decades, a velvet-lined box sat untouched in the Queen Mother's private vault, its contents known only to a select few. But now, Prince William has finally broken the silence, revealing a bombshell that redefines royal favor and ignites a firestorm inside the palace. This isn't just about jewelry, it's about legacy, allegiance, and a choice made in the shadow of power. Why was this brooch kept hidden, and why only for Catherine? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For years, whispers moved through royal corridors like ghosts that never quite found a voice. Servants spoke in fragments, aides in half-finished sentences, and senior courtiers in knowing glances that hinted at something locked away far beyond public reach. The Queen Mother's private vault was no ordinary storage room. It was a silent archive of power, emotion, and unresolved intention. Among its contents, one object drew more speculation than all the rest, combined a brooch so rarely referenced that some questioned whether it even existed. And yet, whenever moments of supreme royal consequence approached, whenever the crown itself seemed to tremble beneath the weight of history, that same brooch appeared, pinned discreetly, as if guiding fate from the shadows. Those who noticed never spoke. Those who spoke were never confirmed. The rumors grew sharper over time, passing through generations of insiders who never fully understood what they were carrying. Some said the stones were older than the monarchy itself. Others whispered that it had once been worn during a decision that nearly tore the royal line apart, but the most dangerous rumor of all was this, that the Queen Mother had made a choice about its final bearer long before Catherine ever stepped into the royal world. A choice sealed in silence. A legacy promised in advance. She says it belongs with the future, not the past. The words were soft when they first surfaced, allegedly spoken by the Queen Mother to a trusted confidant in her final years. At the time, no one knew what she meant. Some assumed it referred to the monarchy itself, others thought it was simply the reflection of age. But now, in the harsh light of William's revelation, those words strike like a verdict delivered decades too early, because in one quiet act of foresight, the Queen Mother may have rewritten the emotional map of the entire royal family. The tension created by that silence was never harmless. It brewed slowly, invisibly, shaping relationships in ways no one could publicly explain. Questions lingered about why certain heirlooms moved freely, while others remained frozen in place. Why certain figures were elevated in subtle, symbolic ways, while others felt perpetually held at arm's length. And at the center of that long, unspoken imbalance sat the brooch untouched, unseen, and yet impossibly heavy with meaning. William's decision to speak about it did not come easily. For years, he carried the knowledge quietly, sharing it only with an inner circle bound by loyalty and caution. Those private conversations were careful, weighted with the understanding that once this truth escaped, nothing inside the royal family would feel the same again. Yet even in silence, the pressure of inheritance, expectation, and destiny continued to tighten around Catherine in ways she could never fully explain, a growing sense that she was being prepared for something far beyond titles and ceremony. And then, at last, the silence broke. What Catherine did not know, what she could not possibly have prepared for, was that this revelation was not the end of the secret. It was only the beginning of its true purpose. But what Catherine didn't know until now was that this wasn't just a brooch. It was a royal message hidden in plain sight, and its unveiling would change everything. When William handed her the sealed envelope bearing the Queen Mother's insignia, Catherine's hands trembled. What she read would bring her to tears and to a deeper sense of purpose. Inside that moment was not just honor, but burden. Not just legacy, but warning. How does one accept a gift that rewrites their entire destiny? There was no ceremony, no announcement, no crowd waiting to witness the exchange. It happened in a quiet room, away from public view, where William simply placed the envelope in her hands and whispered, "She chose you." For a moment, Catherine didn't breathe. The envelope, delicate and yellowing with time, seemed to weigh more than any crown she had ever imagined. Breaking the wax seal was like opening the past, and stepping into a future she hadn't known was already charted for her. The letter was written in the Queen Mother's unmistakable hand, each word precise, deliberate, and soaked in sentiment. It began without pleasantries, instead cutting directly to the point. If you are reading this, then the time has come. The realization struck Catherine like a thunderclap. She hadn't inherited this honor through lineage or protocol. She had been chosen, decades before she even entered the royal sphere. The Queen Mother had looked through the fog of time and selected her. The letter detailed not only the decision but the reason behind it. It referenced turmoil within the monarchy, a time when traditions risked being lost to modern chaos. And amidst it all, the Queen Mother foresaw the need for someone calm, steady, emotionally intelligent, a woman not born into power, but built for it. The lines that followed offered praise but not flattery. They were frank, almost daunting. The monarchy will be tested again. It needs an anchor. You must decide what kind of queen you intend to be, not when the crown touches your head, but long before it does. As Catherine read and reread those words, memories surged. The early years when tabloids dissected her every move. The awkward ceremonies, the cold stares from palace traditionalists, the comparisons to Diana, the endless scrutiny of her silence. All of it now recontextualized. None of it had been without purpose. It hadn't been mere endurance, it had been preparation. Every slight, every test had been a measure of her resolve. And she had passed, even when no one told her there was a test at all. That knowledge was at once empowering and terrifying. She had risen through dignity, but now that same dignity would be demanded at levels she could barely fathom. The letter closed with a line that broke her. "You are the anchor to a crumbling crown. Hold fast." It wasn't a compliment. It was an instruction, a cry for help disguised as a royal decree. And for the first time, Catherine understood that her greatest strength was not charm, nor tradition, nor beauty. It was her silence, her ability to absorb storms without sinking the ship. But now, that silence had been weaponized into something more. She had been given the weight of history, and with it, the responsibility to decide what came next. Still, beneath the pride was an unsettling sense of displacement. Why her? Why now? What of Camilla, of Anne, others who had stood by the monarchy longer, louder? The joy was real, but it was shadowed by the creeping guilt that this gesture could tear open wounds she never meant to touch. She had not asked for this war of symbols, but it had found her. And now she would have to wear it like armor. But as Catherine tried to process her private emotions, a storm was brewing in the royal corridors, one that would reveal how deeply others resented this act of royal destiny. Camilla had always maintained an air of indifference, but behind closed doors her fury boiled over. She was never meant to have it, she snapped to her aides. With that sentence, old tensions roared back to life, and Catherine's new honor turned into a battlefield of status, jealousy, and long-buried resentment. In public, she was poised, silent, even stoic, but those closest to Queen Camilla witnessed a side of her few, dared to speak about a quiet unraveling beneath the surface. For years, Camilla had built her image as the unwavering consort, the stable presence beside a monarch who bore the burdens of a divided kingdom. Yet when the news broke that the Queen Mother had reserved her most symbolic heirloom not for her, but for Catherine, it shattered something fragile within her. She had endured the whisper campaigns, the side-by-side comparisons to Diana, the relentless climb from mistress to majesty, and now, with one posthumous letter, she was cast aside once again. Her rage didn't erupt in a single moment. It built in fragments, a slammed door, a shaken teacup, a curt dismissal of a long-time staffer. Then, in a private corridor not far from her private quarters, she finally snapped. The words came like a knife. She was never meant to have it. The staff fell silent. No one asked who she was. They all knew. And from that moment, the air inside the palace changed. The walls felt colder, the glances sharper. Because everyone could see it, the Queen had been wounded not by an outsider, but by a ghost from the past whose will could not be rewritten. What followed was an escalation of tensions between Camilla and Charles that palace aides struggled to contain. In hushed tones behind closed doors, they argued not about the brooch itself, but about what it symbolized. Charles insisted it was a relic of his mother's intuition, not an insult. But Camilla saw it differently, not as legacy, but as rejection. She, accused him of allowing the past to overwrite the present, of standing silently while Catherine was allowed to rise unchallenged. The brooch, she claimed, had become a weapon, and she was its first casualty. Those inside the household soon began whispering of a curious pattern. Documents scheduled for review regarding heirloom distributions mysteriously stalled. Formal jewelry transfers delayed without explanation. More than one advisor suggested Camilla was quietly attempting to assert control over symbolic items, redirecting what was once assumed to be freely passed between generations. Her actions weren't loud, they were precise, tactical, calculated. But they also revealed a deeper truth. Camilla feared not just being eclipsed, but being erased. Behind her controlled exterior was a woman tormented by legacy not her own, but others. Diana's shadow still lingered in the public imagination, and now Catherine, with the Queen Mother as posthumous blessing, had been elevated beyond ceremonial respect into the realm of myth-making. Camilla had survived scandal, isolation, and vilification, but what she couldn't stomach was being rendered irrelevant by a woman half her age, chosen by a matriarch she herself could never win over. Those closest to her confided that this wasn't about vanity, it was about power. The brooch wasn't gold and gemstones, it was authority, legacy, symbolism. And with that symbol now pinned to Catherine, Camilla found herself increasingly alone in a house where even silence had turned against her. But as Camilla fumed in private, another royal figure long underestimated stepped forward to protect the Queen Mother's wishes and escalate the confrontation to a constitutional level. Princess Anne doesn't speak unless it matters, and when she does, the room listens. As tensions erupted, Anne delivered a statement that silenced the entire council. The Queen Mother made her decision, and it will not be undone. Her intervention didn't just settle a dispute, it reignited a war of royal succession beneath the surface. There was no mistaking the tone. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a verdict. At a time when voices in the palace were rising and loyalty was being bartered behind closed doors, Princess Anne emerged as the one figure who refused to flinch. Her words carried the weight of tradition, not rhetoric, and the room, filled with dukes, advisors, and a seething Camilla, fell into an unnatural silence. Anne didn't speak for sentiment or spectacle. She spoke for history, and everyone knew it. Her loyalty to the Queen Mother was not performative, it was personal, etched into decades of private counsel, shared confidences, and silent mutual understanding. She alone knew what the Queen Mother had feared in her final years, and more importantly, whom she had trusted to carry the crown's center of gravity forward. Behind her commanding tone was a deeper buried truth, one Anne had kept quiet until now, hidden within the constitutional appendices rarely accessed, and even more rarely acknowledged was a sealed annex attached to Appendix Windsor IV, a document historically used to formalize internal royal instructions. Few had ever seen its full contents, but Anne had, and buried within its final clauses was a subtle yet unmistakable line, designating the brooch as a future symbol of continuity to be granted by intent, not rank. The Queen Mother had ensured that even from beyond the grave, her voice would not be drowned by courtly politics. That phrase, by intent, not rank, was a dagger to the heart of Camilla's aspirations, and Anne, never one to hide behind euphemism, wielded it with precision. In a highly confidential Clarion Council session, Anne confronted Camilla directly. Those in the room report. The exchange is brief, but blistering. Camilla argued tradition. Anne responded with clarity. Tradition, she said, is not a weapon to be used when convenient. It is a promise kept, even when it cuts. The confrontation didn't escalate beyond words, but its aftershock was felt across the palace. Aides who had remained neutral began re-evaluating their allegiances. It became clear that Anne wasn't acting alone. Her quiet proximity to William, her recent long meetings with Catherine, her presence at engagements once beneath her rank, all pointed to a shift not just in strategy, but in alliance. No longer was this about a single brooch, or even a single legacy. It was about a power recalibration, with Anne deliberately positioning herself alongside the future, not out of sentiment, but survival. Her unwavering support of Catherine wasn't just a defense of a decision, It was a message to the institution that symbolism still mattered, and that the Queen Mother's instincts, however controversial, were not to be overwritten by modern ambition. Anne, the most disciplined of all royals, had just broken protocol, not with chaos, but with conviction. And in doing so, she awakened something Charles had hoped would remain buried: the hidden tensions between past legitimacy and present compromise. Now, with Anne standing firm and the Queen Mother's words weaponized, Charles was forced to confront not only the symbolism of the brooch, but everything it had come to represent. But Anne's powerful defense triggered a chain reaction, one that would pull even King Charles into a dilemma he thought he had buried long ago. Even monarchs carry secrets, and for King Charles, the Queen Mother's vault was one he never dared open. But with the brooch revelation unraveling the fabric of palace loyalties, Charles was forced to confront what else might lie within. What he found inside stunned even him, and whispered a truth that threatened to unravel decades of royal history. The vault had remained untouched for years, more out of emotional paralysis than procedural restraint. Nestled deep within Balmoral's East Wing, it was the Queen Mother's final sanctuary, a space of reflection, intention, and memory. Charles had visited it only once after her passing, but left before unlocking a single drawer. He always told himself there would be time. But now, as the brooch's appearance reignited questions of legacy and favoritism, silence was no longer a luxury he could afford. Accompanied by no one, he descended into the dim chamber, knowing the truth he had buried for decades might finally rise to meet him. Inside, among the papers and preserved tokens of royal memory, lay a smaller, linen-wrapped parcel marked with his name. The seal was familiar, her private crest, used only for correspondence that was never meant to be filtered through staff or advisors. Charles hesitated. He had weathered criticism, survived scandal, and reshaped a monarchy under siege. But the idea that his own mother had chosen to speak to him after death, in words too sharp to say aloud while alive, brought a tremor he couldn't suppress. He opened the letter and found not consolation but clarity. In her unmistakable script, the Queen Mother laid bare her rationale. "I feared sentiment would cloud your judgment. I could not allow the symbolism of the crown to be bartered in your compromises." Her words struck hard. She praised his resilience, his transformation under pressure, but she made no apologies for bypassing Camilla. She was never meant to carry the weight of tradition, the letter read, because tradition never chose her. It was not cruelty, it was certainty. And as Charles absorbed each line, the ache was not only for the content, but for what it confirmed: that the Queen Mother had seen his choices, anticipated the consequences, and acted without trusting him to intervene. The brooch had not been an oversight, it had been a safeguard. He remembered the years following Diana's passing, when public trust was brittle and the royal image in freefall. He had tried, discreetly, to reassign heirlooms to balance visibility, modernity, and stability. There had been talks of distributing legacy jewels to equalize status among key women of the family. And though he never admitted it, the brooch had once been on that list. But every time he raised the matter, his mother grew cold. Now he understood why. She had seen his intentions as dangerously political and had quietly moved the brooch into protected hands. In that moment, Charles made a decision he never thought he would have to make. He would not contest it. He would not explain it. The Queen Mother's will would stand. No public statement, no televised acknowledgement, just silence. And that silence was louder than any proclamation. It was his way of conceding, his way of honouring a matriarch who, even in death, had seen farther than he dared. But while Charles grappled with painful clarity, it was William's next move that would ignite a media firestorm, a televised revelation that stunned the nation. In a rare televised address, Prince William locked eyes with the nation and delivered a revelation that sent shockwaves across the Commonwealth. The Queen Mother chose Catherine not out of favouritism but faith. With that sentence, centuries of protocol fractured, and whispers of a new royal order began to take shape. It was not the usual carefully curated press statement or symbolic public appearance. It was William alone, composed but burning with clarity, addressing a global audience that had grown weary of half-truths and whispered intrigue. The timing was calculated, fallen. On the anniversary of the Queen Mother's death, a moment already drenched in memory and gravitas. With the world watching, William didn't just defend his wife, he elevated her. My grandmother saw strength where others saw silence. She saw purpose where others sought position. And she entrusted Catherine with a piece of our family's deepest history because she believed in her, even before she arrived. The words hit with the weight of a proclamation. Within minutes, headlines around the world exploded. News outlets cut to live reactions. Royal commentators scrambled to contextualize the implications. The brooch, once just a historical curiosity, had become the symbol of a future reign. Catherine was no longer just the Princess of Wales. She was now, in the public's eyes, the living embodiment of a generational promise handpicked by the Queen Mother herself. The public response was electric. Social media erupted in support, with posts celebrating Catherine as the people's sovereign, a phrase that quickly began trending across continents. Hashtags turned into movements, public figures chimed in. A quiet tide of loyalty surged beneath the surface, not to the institution, but to the woman at its heart. Inside the palace, however, the mood was starkly different. Hours after the broadcast, Camilla was seen quietly exiting through a private gate, avoiding cameras for the first time in months. Speculation soared. Some suggested she was stepping back, others claimed she was furious, but all agreed on one thing: something had changed. Her absence was deafening. What William had done wasn't just an emotional defense of his wife, it was a declaration of succession not by birthright, but by conviction, and it placed Catherine in a position no royal consort had held in generations, not just beside the throne, but leading toward it. This was not just a family moment, it was a seismic shift in the monarchy's psychological architecture. The Queen Mother's unseen hand, now exposed, had redrawn allegiances, shattered assumptions, and rewritten the rules of influence in a single stroke. William, in choosing to make the letter public, had not only fulfilled his grandmother's private will but also confronted the institutional resistance head-on. And he did so with the clarity of a man no longer bound by fear of tradition, but empowered by the need to protect what truly matters: his wife, his children, and the future of the monarchy they will inherit. But the brooch itself still held one more secret, a hidden compartment, a final whisper from the Queen Mother that would leave even Catherine breathless. Polished by decades of secrecy, the brooch gleamed under candlelight. But it wasn't until Catherine examined it closely that she found the hidden hinge, and inside, a delicate inscription that no one had seen in over 70 years. Its message, a haunting declaration of trust, sovereignty, and a woman's duty to protect the soul of the monarchy. What began as a symbol of honor had just transformed into something far more personal, a message from the grave, wrapped in metal and time. It was William who first noticed the faint shift in the brooch's backplate, a tiny ridge that resisted pressure, unless turned a certain way. Catherine hesitated, unsure whether the brooch should be tampered with. But something instinctive compelled her a pull she couldn't name. When the plate gave way with a soft click, what lay beneath wasn't a mechanism or signature, but a line of engraved words that silenced her breath. For the one who anchors the crown, you will know when it is time. 16 words, that was all. But in them echoed the entirety of the Queen Mother's final hopes, and the unbearable weight of a future that was no longer hypothetical. Catherine sat in stunned silence. She didn't cry, not immediately. It was too much to process, too deeply embedded in layers of meaning and expectation. The brooch was no longer a keepsake or a gesture. It was a command. The phrase, "you will know when it is time," lingered in her mind like a ticking clock. And suddenly every decision, every moment of composure, every act of restraint she had shown over the years took on new meaning. This wasn't merely about being chosen. It was about being trusted to act, to step forward, not when convenient, but when necessary. When the institution faltered, when the people questioned, when the crown, for all its pageantry, trembled at the edge of irrelevance. That night, Catherine showed William the inscription. The two didn't speak at first, they just stared at the brooch lying between them, once an heirloom, now a call to destiny. When they finally talked, their words were careful, deliberate. William asked the question that lingered in both their minds: "Do you think it's time?" But Catherine didn't answer. She didn't need to, not yet. The moment was coming, but it hadn't arrived. Still, the symbolism surrounding her now had grown undeniable. This wasn't about titles. It was about guardianship of tradition, of truth, of something older than monarchy itself. The brooch had become more than jewelry. It was now a compass. And she, the only one entrusted with its message, was expected to use it. The weight of that responsibility changed her. In the days that followed, those close to her noted a shift, not in demeanor, but in intention. She began requesting updates on areas of state and charity usually left to senior royals. She held longer meetings. She asked more. Pointed questions. She stood taller, listened more quietly, and spoke with clarity that unsettled even seasoned advisors. Something had shifted, not externally, internally. And they could feel it. The brooch had spoken and Catherine was listening. But with meaning comes movement, and in a matter of days, Catherine would make a stunning decision that would bring the brooch's purpose to life. The palace hadn't seen such tension in decades. As royals gathered for the Windsor summit, eyes darted and whispers surged until Catherine entered, wearing the Queen Mother's brooch with regal certainty. Gasps echoed through the marble halls. This wasn't an accessory, it was an announcement. Catherine had chosen her moment and no one could stop what came next. Her entrance was timed with meticulous purpose. The Windsor summit, long regarded as the Crown's most internal and strategic gathering, was not a stage for sentiment or display. It was a council of power, a place where titles tightened and succession lines solidified. And that's precisely why Catherine waited for that moment. The Queen Mother's brooch, once hidden and sealed, now rested over Catherine's heart, not in defiance, but in declaration. She crossed the threshold of the grand chamber with silent command, her presence turning murmurs into gasps. The effect was immediate. Royals known for steely composure lost their breath. Those seated rose instinctively, unsure if the act was one of protest or allegiance. Somewhere near the center of the room, a voice whispered, "She really wore it. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a verdict, spoken without words. The message was unmistakable." For years, Catherine had endured the ceremonial role of observer, even as her influence grew behind the scenes. But now, with the world watching and the palace holding its breath, she stepped into something far more deliberate, not as fade to the air, but as heir to a vision. And when she finally spoke, the room froze. "I wear it," she said, not in pride, but in promise. There was no arrogance, no performance, just clarity. She wasn't claiming a throne. She was accepting a responsibility passed down in whispers and now shouted in silence. Her words weren't just heard, they were absorbed, as if the walls themselves were listening. Reactions poured in instantly. Global leaders who had grown accustomed to the old order issued respectful statements praising her composure and foresight. Commentators across Europe called it a masterstroke, a symbolic coronation without the crown. Even critics, long skeptical of her silence, admitted the brooch had become the monarchy's most unspoken shift of power. It wasn't about diamonds or status. It was about legacy made visible and irreversible. But perhaps the most chilling statement came through absence. Camilla did not attend. Her chair remained empty, a void far louder than any protest. Her aides gave no explanation, and her office declined comment. But no one needed confirmation. The meaning was clear. Catherine had moved, and Camilla had no counter. From that day forward, something subtle but permanent changed. The summit, which should have belonged to Charles, became Catherine's moment, not by law but by myth. She had crossed a threshold that no consort had crossed in living memory, stepping into a realm where tradition meets transformation. And everyone, from the oldest lords to the youngest advisors, knew it. But behind every moment of glory lies a ripple effect, and the Queen Mother's final gift would soon fracture the royal household in ways no one saw coming. Not all symbols unite. As Catherine's position soared, royal unity cracked. Some whispered support, others simmered in silent opposition. The Queen Mother's brooch, once a symbol of quiet devote, Ion, had become a line in the sand. And as factions formed, one question haunted the palace: had this gift saved the crown or begun its next great war? In the days following the Windsor summit, The air inside the royal institution shifted from ceremonial stillness to a kind of whispered unrest. The brooch had been unveiled, but it was more than a pin of diamonds and history. It had become a banner, whether Catherine wanted it to or not. The moment she stepped into the chamber wearing it, a fault line began to crack across the House of Windsor. Edward and Anne, already known for their strategic alignment and shared respect for tradition, subtly but unmistakably leaned toward Catherine. Their presence beside her in subsequent events didn't feel like protocol, it felt like allegiance. Behind the scenes, conversations shifted. In subtle acts of scheduling, seating, and support, they made it clear they saw in Catherine the future, not just of the family, but of the Crown's moral compass. But where there is unity, there is also division. Charles's private circle began closing ranks, and Camilla's allies, those who had spent years crafting her role in the monarchy, found themselves increasingly on the defensive. Their frustration was not just with Catherine, but with what she now represented, not modern monarchy, but ancestral authority reborn. The Queen Mother's gesture had undone years of delicate positioning, rewriting unspoken rules and igniting dormant rivalries. Within days, Louise and Beatrice, once considered junior figures, began making quiet moves that signaled their positions. Louise, deeply bonded to Anne and long admiring of Catherine's calm strength, reportedly asked to serve more closely with Catherine's initiatives. Beatrice, too, made her stance known, appearing alongside Catherine in engagements that seemed too symbolic to be coincidental. The British media didn't miss the shift. Headlines began circulating about a court within a court. Journalists who once avoided palace dynamics now speculated openly about emerging royal factions. Pundits called it the Catherine contingent, a growing force within the monarchy composed not of ambition, but of conviction. And at the centre of it all was William. His authority, once assumed to be inherited without question, now became something more profound. It was empowered by Catherine's rise. The brooch had become his rallying point, the confirmation of a lineage not just of blood, but of belief. His decisions, increasingly bold and strategic, mirrored the quiet strength his wife now carried in full view of the world. But while alliances formed, trust dissolved elsewhere. Closed-door meetings grew tenser, invitations to private royal events were scrutinized. Rumors of icy exchanges, withheld documents, and late-night confrontations leaked through cracks in the palace walls. The brooch had become the silent witness to a struggle not yet declared, a cold war within the family that no one wanted to admit had already begun. And in a quiet study tucked away from the chaos, it was said that the brooch now rested beside Queen Elizabeth II's private diary. Not locked in a vault, not hidden behind glass, but simply placed there waiting, watching. A reminder that some legacies don't fade, they awaken. And so what began as a silent gesture now roars through the annals of royal history. A brooch, a choice, and a queen rising from the shadows of legacy. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.